Now, what can we do when somebody offers us a drink? You might be at a work function, you might be at a christening, a wedding. Somebody comes up to you and says, Mary, David, do you want to have a pint? Do you want to have a glass? What can we say to those individuals? Well, what I want to do for you in this video is I want to break down 8 different things that you can say to this drinker. At the end of the day, we will get asked for a drink, right? So if I can share some scripts or some kind of ways that you can respond, it's going to make things way easier for you. So you definitely want to watch this video. Now, just before we get into the video, if you actually want my personal help stopping drinking and you want to come into the Sober Clear program, where we really focus on building a life without alcohol and really reframing the way you view alcohol using first principles thinking, click the link in the description. You can book a call with me and we can get on a phone call and we can see if the Sober Clear program may be a good fit for you. So if you want help in a positive, optimistic way that doesn't rely on guilt and labels and shame, click the link in the description, choose a time to speak. But for now, let's get back to the video. Now, the first thing that you can say to somebody when they offer you a drink is this: no thanks, I don't drink. Now, I know this sounds very simple, and it is so simple. This is the most simple and blunt way that you can handle this conversation. No explanation, no explaining yourself whatsoever. No thanks, I don't drink. Now, I like this approach. I think this approach can be very effective for some people. And don't get me wrong, some of these things, like some of these 8 things, are going to be relevant for certain individuals. You know, let's say you're at a bar, the bartender offers you a drink. No thanks, I don't drink. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to engage in a dialogue. That bartender might say, well, what do you want instead? I'll have this. Conversation finished. This scenario could also happen when you're with, a friend of a friend, and the friend of the friend is like, do you want a drink? You say, no thanks, I don't drink. Oh, come on, let's have one. No, I don't drink. End of conversation. You can then move on with the conversation. In some scenarios, it really is that simple. You don't need to explain yourself. You just say, I don't drink. Not everybody drinks, right? Just because that's the world that we live in, where most people see it as a normal thing, there are a huge percentage of the population that don't drink whatsoever. So sometimes this is the best way to do it. No thanks, I don't drink. And then offering no explanation whatsoever. It's just nothing. I don't drink. The second thing that you can say is the exact same thing. You can say, no thanks, I don't drink. However, some people will leave it there, but some people may challenge you. They might say, oh, why not? Now it's kind of up to you. The first option is you just say, well, I just don't drink. End of conversation. The second option is you actually explain why. You could share a little bit about your background, a little bit about your story, why you got into this journey, which is totally okay. In some scenarios, this is fine. For example, a close friend, a close family member, somebody that supports you. Sometimes it can be good to engage in these dialogues. Why not? This isn't for everybody. Some people don't really want to talk about their past or their experience and their struggle with alcohol, but this is something that I've done many times. I meet a friend or a new person that I've met in my life and we're building a friendship, and they may ask, this is eventually going to come up in a conversation somewhere. And yeah, some people, I'm going to share things with them. I'm going to explain, what things used to be like, why I've chosen to stay on this path, and I might tell them about Sober Clear and the work that I'm doing. And sometimes it's good to do this. However, bear in mind that sometimes this can backfire, right? Sometimes you may tell somebody that, yeah, they offer you a drink, I don't want to drink, they challenge you, you explain why, and then immediately it can backfire with that individual saying, well, I can just take it or leave it. I just drink at the weekend. And they'll start explaining themselves and justifying themselves. So sometimes this isn't always the best thing to say to people, because it can start not necessarily a conflict, but it can put that other person in a defensive mode. So just be careful if you do this. Now, the third thing that you can say to somebody, if you really just want to kind of push them aside, is it's no thanks, I'm not drinking at the moment, right? None of the things that I'm saying are lies, right? I just want to make that clear, because sometimes, we can come up with excuses like, oh, I've got a bad tummy, blah, 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 and come up with like these little lies. I don't really want to do that. But let's say that you've decided that you're not going to drink anymore. If you were to tell an individual, because you don't want that conflict, you don't want that challenging from somebody, you just tell them, I'm not drinking at the moment. Even if you've decided that you'll never drink again, the actual phrase that you're saying is 100% truthful, because at this moment, you are not drinking. So rather than telling people, I've given up drinking forever and getting into that dialogue, especially if that other individual is drinking, we can just literally say, I'm not drinking at the moment. And then we can get on with the conversation. We can move on to the next thing. Sure, you might have to deal with that person saying why they're drinking and so on and so forth, but you can move past that. You can move on to something else. Now, the fourth thing that you may wish to say to somebody that offers you a drink is just, no thanks, I'm just taking a break. Even if you've decided to stop permanently, this can be another thing that you just tell people. You can say, yeah, I'm taking a break. It's a permanent break, but you don't need to reveal all of the information and all of the reasons. That's not for everybody, right? We can say these things to people because we don't need to explain ourselves to every single person. We can just tell them, no thanks, I'm taking a break, then move on. Now, the fifth thing that we can say to people is, no thanks, I have a very important day tomorrow, right? And it doesn't even matter if your day, the next day, you're planning to watch TV all day, watch Netflix, order junk food, and do nothing, right? You can still tell people, no thanks, I have a very important day tomorrow. You can say that every single day to every single person. When you say this, people will often just kind of back off and leave you alone. They'll be like, okay, I understand. But it doesn't matter what you're doing the next day, because every single day is important. Every single day is another day for you to wake up, feel free, not have to have a hangover, not need to nurse yourself and feel the guilt and feel the shame. Every day is an important day. So you can say this to people every single time that they ask you a drink, because every day is important. You don't need to be running a marathon the next day to tell people that you're not drinking. You don't need to have a job interview the next day. You can just tell them that I have a very important day tomorrow, I can't drink. That's totally fine. Great thing to say to people. The sixth thing that you may say to people, and like I said, I'm not telling you to lie by any means or be untruthful, but you can tell people that if you are training for something, that you are currently training for some kind of event or sports match or something like that. That event could be a year from now. It could be 2 years from now. You might not have even signed up. You might just have the idea of an event coming up in the future. So you can tell people that. Sometimes, more often than not, you'll tell people something like that and they'll just back off. They'll be like, cool, that's totally fine. You know, maybe it's a 5K that's gonna happen a year from now. It doesn't matter. Now, the seventh thing that you can say when somebody offers you a drink is, no thanks, I don't drink, and here is why. Why would I want to drink? It's poisonous. Why would I want to drink wine when the person next to you is drinking wine? Right, we can do this, right? We can be very defensive and we can create some conflict. Now, obviously, I don't recommend doing this, right? But you know, you might have been watching this channel for a while. You might have really woken up to the truth. You might have seen alcohol in a completely different way now, and you want to tell other people. You know, you meet somebody that offers you a beer and you're like, dude, wait till I tell you what beer really is, right? Listen, the information that I share with you, it's for a specific type of person. It's for somebody that knows that they want to change. They're trying to put the pieces together. They're really trying to figure things out, get on with things, right? If you was to go to the average drinker in the street and show them my YouTube channel, they are probably going to swear and say that I'm crazy and I'm an idiot and what does he know? He's too young, blah. They're going to come up with all of these things. The content that I share, it appeals to a specific type of person. And we've got to be careful not to meet new people and people offer us a drink and then we just go bleh, you know, and start telling them the stuff that I share. Because it can create conflict, it can create arguments. To me, it's not worth it. I would never do that. I never really share these things in public. I don't meet people unless they ask and they're very inquisitive and they genuinely are interested. I keep a lot of this stuff to myself because I don't think that you can push somebody to change. I don't think that you can tell people the stuff that I'm telling you without them having some desire and some willingness to actually want to put the drink down. Now, sometimes you might meet somebody that's been struggling a long time and yeah, you might go this approach. You might kind of start breaking things down for them, which is cool. But a lot of the times we want to avoid creating conflict. And the final thing is we can say to people, no thanks, I'm not drinking. And here are all the awesome things that are happening in my life. I'm losing weight, I'm feeling good, and etc, etc. Now, this can sometimes be a good approach. If we're with a close friend and somebody that really supports us and isn't judgmental, we can do this and we can create that dialogue with another individual and help them look at their drinking patterns. However, sometimes this can come across as unsolicited advice. People will immediately get defensive and start, justifying their behavior. So you've got to be careful with this one. You've got to be careful with all of these things, right? Different times, different scenarios are going to require different responses. Now, for me personally, I only really ever go with approach 1 and 2. I only ever say to people, I don't drink. And then for some people, I'll explain a little bit why. I don't come up with excuses anymore. I don't need to say anything because I'm all in, right? I'm done with alcohol. However, earlier on in my journey, I'm sure that I used some of these other things that I'm explaining. So hopefully that was helpful for you. Hope you guys have a great day. Thanks a lot.